It took an incredible fourth quarter comeback, but Mark Few and Team USA will play France for a chance at gold on Saturday, while Filip Petrusev and Serbia fight for bronze.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Friday. Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, make every moment more. It's the dog days of summer. The Olympics are about to wrap up, and the sports just aren't going to be sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, folks, we're closing out the week, remembering some guys. We're going to talk about 5 Zags who last played at Gonzaga 10 or more years ago, who are still playing professional basketball overseas. Some of these names, they're going to shock you. We're also going to talk about some Zags in the MLB updates. We're going to talk about how Alek Jacob is doing with his run with the San Diego Padres the last couple of weeks. Been excellent. Eli Morgan's having a great summer as well. Talk Marco Gonzalez and Brett Harris as well. All that coming up later in the show. But first, let's talk about the biggest news on Thursday. Hopefully many of you got an opportunity to step out of work, take a half day, have the game up on your laptop while working. I don't know, but it was an incredible basketball game between Team USA and Team Serbia. The winner of this game ended up being Team USA. They get an opportunity to compete for a gold medal, and this was a fantastic basketball game. Heartbroken for Serbia. They had an opportunity. They had lots of opportunities to win this basketball game. Ultimately did not happen. It is an iconic moment for USA basketball because the fourth quarter comeback for this team. Here's the deal. Team USA won by 4, 95-91. That was the final score. If you saw the final score, you saw the box score, you might not notice anything particularly notable on it outside of, it's kind of a closer matchup than maybe you would have expected. Team USA was down 8 at the end of the first quarter. They were down 11 at halftime. And they were down 13 after 3 quarters. They were at 8-point deficit in the first half. They got outscored by 3 points in the first quarter. They got outscored by 3 points in the second quarter. They got outscored again by 2 points in the third quarter. They were down 13. At one point, the deficit was 17. That was the largest deficit. Team USA was down 17 points in the second half, and then outscored Serbia 32-15 in the fourth quarter. The comeback was spurned by the veterans, the old heads for Team USA. It's 2024, and this team is winning medals or putting themselves in a position to win gold thanks to LeBron James, thanks to Steph Curry, thanks to Kevin Durant. The era of the younger guys, Jason Tatum didn't play in this game. Tyrese Halliburton didn't play in this game. Anthony Edwards had a pretty bad game, if we're being perfectly honest. The young guys did not step up in this contest, and it was won by the veterans. Joel Embiid, he deserves a shout out. He had a fantastic game here as well. The catalyst was Steph Curry. He had, I think, 17 in the first quarter, finished with 36 points. We knew Steph was going to come around eventually. He has been slow all summer or throughout this process. He's averaging like 7 points a game coming into this contest. He was cooking in the first quarter, finished this thing with 36, hit some clutch shots in the fourth quarter as well. 9 of 14 from 3 in this contest. LeBron had a quiet triple-double, 16 points, 12 boards, 10 assists for him. Embiid had 19. Kevin Durant had a clutch mid-range shot in the fourth quarter. There was a stretch where Steph hit a long three-pointer. LeBron got a rebound and went coast to coast, finished on the left side of the rim with his right hand. And then the next possession, Kevin Durant hit a mid-range jumper. And I saw this posted on Twitter. It couldn't more encapsulate those 3 players than a Steph Curry deep 3, a LeBron James coast-to-coast lay-in on the left side, and a Kevin Durant mid-range jump shot contested. That is literally all 3 of those players' signature iconic moves, back-to-back-to-back possessions, gives Team USA the lead. They don't ever relinquish it. They end up taking down Team Serbia in this one. Filip Petrusev, 9 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 steals for him. He was 3 of 6 from the field, 1 of 1 from the three-point line. He hit a 3 very early in this game to give Serbia a 5-2 lead. I was typing it up as a post on Twitter as I was typing it saying, Serbia's up 5-2. Steph Curry hit a three and then went on a complete tear. The tweet had barely posted and Steph already had like 9 points at that point. It was a very quick and very tremendous run from Steph in that game. But Petrusev, in both the games that Team USA has played Serbia, for some reason, Petrusev has poked the bear on LeBron James. I don't know why he hasn't been taught not to do that. Like, don't alienate LeBron James. It doesn't work well for anybody. And Petrusev, there was a bit of a scuffle. Bogdanovich kind of started it. He was jawing at Carmelo Anthony on the sideline, which also seems like a bad idea. Don't jaw at the old head, the great of Team USA, and LeBron really didn't take well to that. Petrusev was in the mix. There's some scuffling. After that, Petrusev kind of tried to go at LeBron. LeBron took the ball from him. LeBron posted him up on the other end, got a bucket. It was kind of what you'd expect to see from LeBron when he starts to get a little pissed off. Team USA now has a chance to compete for this gold medal, as everybody kind of expected them to be in that game. It was tenuous for most of this contest, but they will take on France. The game is on Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, so 3:30 Eastern time. It'll be on Peacock like the rest of the Olympics have been. France has done their work against the Zags in this tournament. They eliminated Japan. They eliminated Japan and Rui Hachimura. They eliminated Kelly Olynyk and Andrew Nembhard and Connor Griffin for Team Canada. Now they're going to try to set their sights on eliminating Mark Few. Team USA taking home gold while the Olympics are in Paris. Been a little bit of home cooking from the referees. I talked about that on a recent show. The phantom ejection of Rui in that game against Japan still kind of haunts me, and I'm sure haunts him and those Japanese fans and players for that team. And while France played better than Canada in that game, there's no debate about it. They also had 17 more free throw attempts than Canada in that contest. So I'm very curious to see how this game gets officiated on Saturday. Again, that'll be at 12:30. A lot of fun, intriguing matchups there. Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert, versus Joel Embiid versus Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo. Big fun battle in the front court between those two countries. Meanwhile, Petrusev and Serbia will compete against Germany. Still an opportunity, of course, for the Serbians to earn a bronze medal if they win that game. Loser of that game, of course, will not earn a medal in that contest. So much as we maybe weren't rooting for the Serbians in that game against Team USA, definitely rooting for them here against Germany. Opportunity for Petrusev and Mark. We know Mark Few's going to medal. Filip Petrusev could medal if they win here, and then that would be 3 Zags coming away from the Olympic Games with medals. Obviously, Sonny Greiniker already took home the gold medal for the women's basketball 3-on-3 event with Team Germany. We talked about that. Excited to see how Serbia looks against this German squad. Unfortunately, not going to be watching that game because it literally tips off at 2 a.m. on Saturday, 5 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're on the East Coast, maybe you can get up early and take that game in. If you're on the West Coast, maybe you just stay up late and watch that one that way. It's going to be a fun matchup. Germany, Franz Wagner, his brother Mo Wagner, Dennis Schroeder. That's kind of the star players for that German team. Obviously, Serbia, Nikola Jokic is the main catalyst. Bogdanovich played very well against Team USA. We'll see if Petrusev can have a big role for that team as they look to take home a bronze medal against Germany on Saturday. We'll have more updated Olympic coverage on Monday next week. We'll, of course, kind of recap how this goes, what we see out of Team USA in their final game, what we see if Petrusev and Serbia are able to get a medal. But what I want to do now, since we're talking about Zags and we're talking about foreign countries and overseas, I wanted to kind of take a look at some Zags who are playing professionally overseas. And this is something we talk about a handful of times throughout the offseason, but typically we focus on more recent Zag alumni. We talk about Rasir Bolton, who had a great rookie season professionally, or guys who were in the program at Gonzaga in the last 3 or 4 years. But I was able to pull together a list of 5 former Zags who all graduated more than 10 years ago, who played professionally this most recent season. And we're going to talk about who they are, how they're doing, how they played at Gonzaga, all that and more coming up in just a second. But first, folks, let's talk about FanDuel. I love sports. You love sports. We all love sports. That's why we're listening to a sports podcast in August. I never want them to stop, but it is the dog days of summer. And like we said, once the Olympics are over, there's just baseball going on. It's a pretty slow part in the season. The sports, they're just not sportsing like we want them to. However, FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And you want some odds on those Olympic matchups right now at FanDuel USA, 16.5-point favorites, over France to take home the gold. Meanwhile, the odds right now, Germany -1. So it is a really close one. I might be taking the money line there on Serbia to pick up a victory. Nikola Jokic is the best player on either of those teams. I think Serbia is going to take home a bronze. If you want to join me, head to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are switching to talk about some former Zags, some guys we haven't thought about in a long time. We're doing a Remember Some Guys segment here, talking about some players that many of you, maybe you were in college when these guys were there, maybe you hadn't even heard of Gonzaga when these guys were there, maybe it was guys you just remember from a previous time, a previous lifetime, it feels like, for some of these guys. And we're going to talk about 5 specific players. The most recent one was at Gonzaga in 2013, which was my senior year at Gonzaga. So I'm feeling the age a little bit here, talking about these guys as if they were at Gonzaga a long time ago, when, you know, it feels like that's when I was there too. So 5 guys to talk about here, all who played professionally this most recent season. We're going to talk about how they did in their most recent season, what their career has looked like over the last decade plus, and how they did in their Gonzaga career. We're going in order of who was the oldest to youngest in terms of when they were at Gonzaga. So we start with Micah Downs. Micah Downs was at Gonzaga from 2006 to 2009. He started his college career at Kansas, transferred to Gonzaga, spent 3 years with the Zags. We talked about him in an episode last week when we were ranking the best transfers in Gonzaga basketball history. Downs was on that list. He spent 10 games last year in Portugal playing with Porto Muniz. I think his career is pretty close to over. He only played the 10 games last year. He didn't play as much the previous few years, but he has played steadily professionally for the better part of the last 15 years. A tremendously long and successful professional basketball career for a guy who was really fun to watch at Gonzaga. He was a good three-point shooter. He shot 40% from 3 as a stretch 4. That was in an era where that wasn't all that popular. He was putting up Killian Tilly, Ben Gregg type numbers as a shooter, and now that's more common. Then wasn't really that common of a thing to see. In those 10 games in Portugal, he averaged 13.5 points, 7 boards, and 5 assists. His last game was in December of 2023. So like I said, it's possible that we have seen the end of Micah Downs' pro career. And if that's the case, what an incredibly well-traveled individual that Micah Downs has been. Here are the places that he has played professionally since departing Gonzaga in 2009, 15 years ago. Russia, Belgium, Spain, the G League, Venezuela, Ukraine, Italy, France, Portugal, and Germany. Micah Downs, what a prolific professional basketball career for him. Moving on, I want to talk about Ira Brown as well. This is a name that a lot of people recognize in part because of the popular Free Ira Brown Gonzaga basketball podcast. But Ira Brown's been around forever. Ira Brown played at Gonzaga from 2007 to 2009. We didn't play much at Gonzaga, hence the Free Ira Brown name. 2 points a game, about 2 boards, shot 60% on 2-pointers, played 57 games, but was always kind of buried on the end of the bench. And Ira Brown has had one of the most fascinating careers that I've ever seen. He was a minor league baseball player. He played in the minor leagues with a pitcher named Zack Greinke. Maybe you've heard of him. He's a future Major League Baseball Hall of Famer. So Ira Brown was teammates with Zack Greinke in the minor leagues. Then he played junior college basketball. Then he came to Gonzaga, spent 2 years more or less on the bench. And then he went to Japan, and he has played professionally in Japan ever since. And a professional basketball player in Japan for 15 years. I think he's 40 now, or he's 39 or he's 40. He played 56 games last year with the Chiba Jets in Japan, averaged 7 points, 5 boards, 1.5 assists per game. He represented Japan in the Tokyo Olympics in 2020 as part of their 3-on-3 basketball team. So we're talking about a former minor league baseball player, a former Gonzaga basketball player, and a professional Olympian on the basketball stage. A very unique career for Ira Brown, one of my favorites to follow. Again, didn't do a whole lot during his time at Gonzaga, but has been a prolific professional basketball player in Japan for the last 15 years. Next up, this list has got a lot of international players. In fact, Micah Downs is the only non-international player on this list. Next up, we got Matisse Merninghoff, who played at Gonzaga for 2 seasons, 2010-11 and 2011-12, was a bench player for the Zags, 3 points a game, shot 41% from 3 in 53 games. He was a spot up, get him the basketball, he's going to shoot the rock type of player. He didn't do a whole lot else in his 2 years at Gonzaga, but he was very good at that. Last season, he played 34 games for BG Göttingen in Germany. Average about 3 points, 1.5 board, shot 36% from three. Every stop for Merninghoff has been in Germany. He has played professionally in his home country. He is German. He's played professionally in Germany for the last 13 years. He's been with BG Göttingen for 8 of those years. So he's been playing for the same team pretty steadily for the majority of the last decade. He was actually teammates last year with Gino Crandall, who did not even come close to overlapping with him at Gonzaga. They were like 8 years apart in their Gonzaga basketball careers, and yet they were both teammates together for Göttingen in a very good season for them. And they went to the playoffs and competed for a championship in Germany. So it's fun to see. That's not the first time we've seen Zags who didn't overlap end up becoming teammates down the line. Eric McClellan and Jeremy Jones were teammates for a while, and they didn't play together at Gonzaga either. It's kind of fun to see those connections get made as Zags really are just kind of permeating throughout the world on the basketball stage. And so for Merninghoff and Crandall to have been teammates is a fun story. And for him to still be playing after a relatively pedestrian 2-year career at Gonzaga, to see his name still cropping up as a guy who played 34 games professionally this most recent season is just fun. That's why we do this. It's fun to get a chance to talk about these kind of guys. Next up, we talked Matisse Merninghoff. Now we're talking Matisse Keita as well. Was at Gonzaga around the same time, actually exactly the same time, 2010-11 and 2011-12, spent 2 years in the program. Similar to Merninghoff, he didn't get off the bench very much. He averaged about 2 points and 1 board per game. He only played 39 games in those 2 seasons with the Zags, but also like Merninghoff has played professionally ever since back in Europe. Last season, he played 34 games with Champagne, which is in the second-tier league in France. He averaged 11.5 points, about 6 assists, and 3.5 boards per game. He has spent his entire professional basketball career in France. Most of the time has been at that second-tier league. He has played 38 total games in the top-tier French league, averaging a little under 3 points a game in those 38 games. So most of his time has been spent at that second level professionally in France. But still, what an accomplishment for him to still be playing professional basketball in his home country a decade after his Gonzaga basketball career. Always fun to be able to talk about that. And last, and very certainly not least, in fact, pretty clearly the most prolific player on this list in terms of what they did while at Gonzaga is Elias Harris. Again, we're kind of remembering some guys and some of these names many of you haven't heard for a while. Elias Harris is a more popular name. He comes up when talking about some of the best Zags of all time, one of the best 4-year Zags of all time, one of the best international Zags of all time. Really tremendous career he had at Gonzaga. He was a 4-year player there, 2009 to 2013, the same 4 years that I was at Gonzaga. So he's got a special place in my heart there. 13.5 points a game, about 7 boards, 1.5 assists, career 35% shooter from 3 again. It was starting to become more popular to have bigs shooting threes then. He washed out of the NBA because he was 6'8" and kind of viewed as a tweener. Like he's more of a 3 or a 4. In the modern NBA, players at that size they're more comfortable having 4s who are 6'8". And I think if he'd been a little bit later, he might have actually been able to have a longer or a better chance of sticking in the NBA. However, he's had a prolific professional basketball career, so I doubt he's complaining too much. Last year, played 33 games with Bayern Munich in Germany, 7 points a game, about 3 boards and 1.5 assists. Career stops for him. He played 2 games with the Los Angeles Lakers. He played in the G League that year. He then spent 7 years playing with Bamberg in Germany. He then spent a little bit of time in Spain, a little bit of time in Japan, and came back to Germany and spent the last 2 years playing for Bayern. Tremendous career at Gonzaga. 3 times All-WCC player. He was the WCC Tournament MVP. He was 2-time All-WCC Tournament. He was also the WCC Rookie of the Year as a freshman. A lot of folks thought he should have left after his freshman year when a lot of places were mocking him as a first-round pick. Hindsight's 2020. I wonder if he thinks if things would have gone differently had he chosen to do that. But again, you spent a huge chunk of your professional career playing in your home country and having success. I don't think he's feeling too upset about how things shook out during his time in Spokane. Folks, switching gears one more time before we close out the show here. Alek Jacob is striking everybody out for the San Diego Padres. Eli Morgan having himself a fantastic month with the Guardians. We're going to discuss the 4 Zags playing in the MLB coming up in just a second. But first, folks, let's talk about game time. Because minor league baseball season is fully underway, and as somebody who lives about 10 minutes away from a ballpark, I love being able to make a last-minute decision to grab a buddy, head out to the ballpark, and take in a game. And that's why I use Gametime, because prices on the Gametime app, they actually go down. the closer it gets to first pitch. So with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And if you're somebody who's concerned that your tickets are going to be bogus and you're going to get turned away at the door, the nice thing about Gametime's ticketing coverage is your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. I love having that peace of mind. So folks, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. You can get 2 tickets to a Hops game, the local minor league team, for like $25. You can go for $5 if you create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. So download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, folks, closing out the show and the week, talking baseball. We like to try to talk baseball on the show whenever we can. We talk about the Gonzaga baseball team. We talk about the Zags playing professionally in the major leagues or the minor leagues. We didn't get to it as much this summer and during the baseball season last year. We just had a lot more stuff going on, conference realignment. Gonzaga's offseason was very busy early on, so we just didn't really get as much baseball talk as I'm used to, and as I know the folks out there who care about the baseball team and the how the alumni are doing. We didn't get as much of it. So I thought it was a good opportunity here in August, as we're kind of in the slower part of the season, to kind of give an update on how the Zags are doing in the MLB. And frankly, up to this point, there hadn't been a lot of good updates. Marco Gonzalez was hurt. Eli Morgan was hurt. Both those guys are back and playing healthy right now. Alek Jacob recently got called up, so we've only seen him in the major leagues for a couple of weeks. Brett Harris was up early, then was back down, and is now back up. So we've kind of now finally have a spot where we can really talk about these 4 guys with some actual data behind that information. And maybe in a future episode, we're going to talk about some of the minor league guys like Gabriel Hughes or Tristan Vreeling or Owen Wild, or some of those guys who are not yet at the big league level. Let's start with Alek Jacob, because this has been the best story in Gonzaga baseball these last couple of weeks. He's been absolutely killing it with the San Diego Padres. I know many of you are listening to this are Padres fans. There's a contingent of Gonzaga and San Diego fans, and Alek Jacob has been the talk of that particular contingent because he's thrown 6.1 innings as of this recording with the San Diego Padres. He has a 1.42 ERA, which means he's given up 1 run in 6 innings. He's walked 1 batter, and he's struck out 13 strikeouts in 6 innings, along with just 1 walk and 1 run surrendered in those 4 games. He was called up in late July and has just been dominant. His first game was 2 scoreless innings against a very good Baltimore Orioles team. His second game was 1 inning, 3 strikeouts against the Dodgers, San Diego's heated rival in the NL West. So to see him strike out 3 straight Dodgers, I know a close friend was just geeking out about seeing Jacob get to do that against the Dodgers. He then threw 2 1/3 innings against the Rockies. That's where he gave up his 1 run, and then followed that up with 1 inning, 3 strikeouts against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Jake was a 16th round pick by the Padres back in 2021. Prior to that, he threw a no-hitter with the Gonzaga Bulldogs. It was one of the most exciting baseball games we've seen in a long time. He has continued to be excellent at every stop of his professional career, including this year in the big leagues. Next up, I want to talk Eli Morgan. Eli Morgan has been a staple of the Cleveland Guardians bullpen for the last 4 years. Dealing with some injuries this year. He's only thrown 17 innings with Cleveland, but he has a 1.56 ERA. So that's 2 guys, former Zags, who have sub-2 ERAs this season. Again, both very small sample sizes. 3 runs total given up by Morgan, 5 walks, 13 strikeouts in 15 games. It's his 4th season with Cleveland. He has a total 4.15 ERA across 240 career innings with the Guardians. He made 9 appearances from March into mid-April, and then he went on the injured list. Had 1 game in May, 1 game in June, 1 game in July, and now has thrown 3 games in August. He was an 8th round pick by the Guardians back in 2017. One of the best changeups in all of baseball. He's absolutely filthy as a reliever. Fastball changeup combo has really worked for him. Cleveland, excellent at developing pitching. If you're watching the MLB draft or tracking it next year and you're trying to figure out what are some teams I want Gonzaga players to go to if they're a pitcher, you want them to go to the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cleveland Guardians, or the Tampa Bay Rays, which is where Owen Wild went this last or two years ago. So it's always good. Or Seattle. Frankly, Seattle's pretty good at it as well. Next up, Marco Gonzalez. Speaking of Mariners and Zag pitchers, Marco no longer with the Mariners, as many of you know. He's with the Pittsburgh Pirates this year. 33 innings on the season. ERA is about 4.5, 17 total runs surrendered, 11 walks, and 23 strikeouts in 7 starts. He made 3 starts in April, and they were all great. Then he went on the injured list. Then he came back for 3 starts in July and 1 in August. He's given up 17 earned runs on the season. 9 of them have been in the last 2 starts. So things started out great, then he got hurt, then he was okay when he came back, and the last 2 starts just have not gone well for Marco. Hopefully that's not a sign that he's dealing with lingering issues from the injury or has re-injured himself. I don't know if that's a situation, just something to monitor with him. Suddenly having bad performances is usually not a good sign for pitchers. He was a first-round pick by the St. Louis Cardinals back in 2013, was traded to the Mariners in the Tyler O'Neill deal, had a very lengthy and productive career as a member of the Seattle Mariners, was shipped off this offseason, and is now in Pittsburgh. Finally, Brett Harris, our last MLB Zag to talk about, the only non-pitcher out of this group. Brett Harris, a third baseman with the Oakland A's, has played 36 games with Oakland, 103 at-bats. He's batting 146, which is not great, but he does have a 276 on-base percentage, which is still not great, but it's a lot better than that 146 batting average, 262 slugging percentage, 3 career home runs, 12 RBIs. Harris made his major league debut on May 3rd. He's an older prospect. College guys who get drafted usually kind of get fast-tracked to the big leagues. It took him a couple of years. He was drafted in 2021 as a 7th-round pick. So it took him a few years to finally get to the big leagues. His first game was on May 3rd. He went 0 for 3. His second game was on May 4th, and he hit 2 home runs. Really cool to see Brett Harris hit 2 home runs in his second career game. Made a lot of headlines. Was kind of the big story in baseball is, whenever a guy in their second game hits 2 home runs, that's definitely going to make some headlines. So it's really cool to see him do that. He played 17 games with the team in May, then got sent down in late May, was down throughout June, got called back up by Oakland in early July, has been with the team ever since. Frankly, after hitting those 2 home runs in his second game, he's kind of hasn't had a ton of success, but he's getting exposure. He's getting opportunities to play at the big league level on an Oakland team that is not very good, hasn't been very good in a long time. And so they're affording him the opportunity to keep kind of working on his game at the big league level. A lot of time prospects or younger players who are not performing get sent back down very quickly. But the A's are in a position where they can kind of let him keep playing out there. So hopefully that means he will have a strong finish to his first major league season here with Oakland. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen, your first watch of the day, for hanging out with us on our Discord channel. If you haven't done that yet, there's a link in the show notes. It's free, audio and video platforms. We got more fun stuff coming your way. We're going to continue to talk Olympics as we get to the championship here on Saturday. That'll be a big part of Monday's show. We got some more recruiting stuff as we get closer to the announcement date by Isaiah Harwell, as we get closer to craziness in the kennel. We'll continue to have updates on recruiting, get you ready for the seasons as they get closer and closer. Thanks again, folks, for listening. Have a fantastic weekend. And as always, go Zags.